After you've created your cam, you need to prepare it in order to insert it into an assembly, animate the cam, and then do some analysis of the motion of that cam in that assembly. So the first thing that we need to do is add a few work features, some work planes and work points, in order for us to fully constrain that cam into the new assembly that you're going to be inserting that in. I'm in this case showing a pair cam. This process will apply for any of the other types of cams, the eccentric cam, the snail cam, and the hexagon cam as well. So the first thing we need to do is add a midplane between the front and rear face of this cam. So if we go to the work features panel, hit the plane drop down, and we want to select midplane between two planes. Then we can click on the front face of the cam, rotate around to the back side, select the back face of the cam, and when we do that, it's going to place a work plane right in the center of our part. So we looked at, say, the left view, we can see that work plane is positioned directly in the center of our cam. And we can see that work plane over here in the browser as well. The second thing we need to do is add a work axis through the center hole for our shaft. So in order to do that, we can go up to Axis under Work Features and hit the drop down. And we want to choose through center of circular or elliptical edge. And we're going to select that. And then if we select the edge of our shaft hole, you'll see that that work axis appears there, shows up in our browser as well. And if you click and hold on that work axis and drag, you can actually extend that out so it's a little easier for you to see in the future. One thing that you can do to make things a little bit easier to work with after you create work features is you can hide these temporarily. So if we go over into the browser and hover over, say, our work plane 1 and right click on it, you'll see the visibility section of the drop down. And if we uncheck the visibility, it hides that work plane, but still keeps it over in our browser. So later on, if we want to use it, we can either just click on it in the browser, or you can right click on the work plane and then check visibility again, and that work plane will reappear. The last thing that we need to add is a work plane that is perpendicular to this first work plane we created, and that goes through the center of our part, or this center of this axis here. It's basically creating a work plane that's perpendicular to this first one and follows the line of symmetry of our cam. So the first thing we're going to want to do is create a work point on this axis that we already created that is level with the front face of this part of our cam. To do that, we're going to go up to the work features panel, hit the drop down for point, and then we're going to select a intersection of a plane or surface and line. When we do that, we're going to select the front face of our cam, and then we're going to select our work axis. And when we do that, you can see over here in the browser it applies a work point, and then you can also see that work point right on that axis and flush with the front of our part. Now we need to create a work plane that goes through the center of that axis and through the center of our part and is perpendicular to our original work plane. Now to do that, we're going to need a work plane that is parallel to that one we want to create. And in order to find that, if we go over to the browser and expand our origin folder, we can see all of our origin work planes and all of our origin work axes. Now this XY plane, or I'm sorry, YZ plane, is perpendicular to our original plane. So this is basically the plane we want to create. But we want to go ahead and actually add a new work plane and not just use this origin plane. So what we'll do is we'll go to Work Features panel, hit the drop down for work plane, and we're going to select parallel to plane and through point. And we're going to select the plane that we want to be parallel to, which is that YZ plane. And then we're going to select the point that we'd like to go through for that axis, and that is this point here on this axis, or we have it over here in the browser as well. Once we click on that, that is going to create another work plane 2 in the browser, which is perpendicular to work plane 1 and goes through the center point of our axis and is basically the line of symmetry of our cam. Now, if you want to, it's kind of small, so if you want to make that a little easier to see, if you hover over it until you see the circles on the edges and click and hold, you can drag this out to make it a little easier to see and a little more visible. Note, though, that all work planes, they don't end where the graphics window shows they end. They extend in both directions infinitely. So that's one thing to note. And then once again, if you would like to hide any of your features that you're not currently using, you can go over to the browser, and let's say I want to hide work plane 1. If I right click on it, go down to visibility, and I can uncheck that. Same thing for let me close that origin folder here. Same thing for work plane 2 as well. So I right click on that, uncheck visibility, and then if I expand work plane 2, I used work plane 1 to create that one, so it's going to be within the work plane 2. I can right click on that and uncheck visibility there as well. And it's good practice in general, if you have work planes that you're using, to hide them out of the way so it's a little easier to work with until you actually need them. So I'm going to go ahead and re-show all of these just so we can make sure that we have everything we need. And then go back to work plane 1 and check that visibility. And these are all the work features that you need to add to your cam in order to import it into our assembly and animate it for analysis.